they think this is their whole life, is this cave. Then someone is able to get out. They go outside. They see the outside world. They come back to share with everybody. Hey, guess what? There's a whole world out there. You're chained up and there's a whole world out there. And what do the people do? The people don't say, yay, let's go out. They say, you're evil, and they try to kill him, right? And we see this in study after study, that ignorance breeds fear. It breeds contempt. So when we're thinking about, is it cognitive dissonance or not? The first thing you have to ask yourself is, how much do I actually know about this thing?
Welcome to the Feminine Alchemy podcast, where we explore the truth about the feminine, the peaceful, the wild, and the visceral. I'm your host, Jaye Anne Beringer, joined by my co-hosts, Julie Dean Richards and Kayelee Rose. Each week, we explore the deep mysteries of the feminine and help listeners apply them to their daily lives in a practical way. Join us to unlock the hidden wisdoms your soul has been waiting for.
Hello, and welcome to another episode of Feminine Alchemy. I'm Jaye Anne Beringer, your host, and Kayelee Rose and Julie Dean Richards are here, my co-hosts. Say hi.
Hello.
So this is the episode that you guys are going to want to send to all your friends that are having trouble putting together safety and all of these different things that we've talked about throughout the entire podcast. Astrology, tarot, what is evil, all of those things. The feminine, people think that the feminine can be evil and they're afraid of that. This is the episode to debunk and unwind all of that. So if your friend sent this to you, it's not because they think there's something bad or wrong. It's because they want you to see their point of view. And so if you receive this episode, just take it for what it is. Okay, we're not here to make anybody do anything they don't feel safe about. What we are here to do is talk about things in a very real fashion and understand where they came from and why we have these fears that bubble up when we hear certain things. So this is my big fat disclaimer saying, give it a chance. Does anyone have something they want to add?
I think that was perfect, Jaye Anne. I think, a big reason that we're talking about this and doing this now is just because as we've had some big shifts astrology-wise, we've gone into kind of, for those who don't know anything about astrology, we're kind of in a new era right now. And the next 12 years are going to be very different than what we've been experiencing. And right now we have Neptune and Saturn in Aries, and other things will play there. And what's happening in this new era is that everybody is kind of taking sides. I'm sure people have felt it. They felt the divide. They felt like, you either have to be this or that. You have to be on this side of the line. And people feel like they really have to defend their beliefs like a warrior. They have to be warriors for their beliefs. They have to cut people off if those people don't believe the same things they believe. There's a lot of delusion going around. And the funny thing is, everybody thinks that someone else is deluded. Everybody thinks that everybody else is wrong and that they're right. And the truth is, we're all wrong. We're all wrong. We're all right. We're all having delusions burned off of us. We're all learning more. And so we've had a lot of questions around, like Jaye Anne was saying, how do you tell if something is bad or evil? Right? Like a lot of people are turned away from the feminine and feminine things because they're scared that it's bad or evil. Because some of the things that we talk about can make people feel uncomfortable depending on the culture or background that they've come from. And so today we just want to help people discern whether their feelings are really coming from a place of fear, their intuition, spiritual guidance, because in this world today, there is a tendency to say, oh, that makes me feel angry or afraid, so it must be wrong, evil, or it must be the devil. The devil must be trying to trick me. The devil must be trying to hurt me. And I see this in all kinds of circles, not just typical Abrahamic religion circles or Christian circles. I also see this in intuition circles and energy circles and spiritual circles. So this is happening for everybody. So we just wanted to kind of break this down and give you guys a hand on, all right, is it fear? Is it cognitive dissonance? Or is it really the devil, quote unquote, the devil?
To add just a little bit to this Neptune astrology here, because what we saw before, Neptune in Pisces, and if this doesn't make any sense, don't worry about it. What it boiled down to is all of these really cool, interesting, spiritual-based businesses expanded hugely, right? And now we've moved into Aries, where there is going to be deep questions about, was this actually better? Did we actually help anyone? Was there anything good that came out of it? Or was it just a different religion dressed up as some kind of new age thing, but we're all still using it the same way as the previous ways? And that's what the discernment's about. And we're just starting on that journey. So of course, in Aries, it's going to be a little bit a lot of conflict oriented. And one thing I'm finding is interesting is the same thing Julie said, is I'm finding a lot of people in the witchy circles accusing others of falling astray and being led by something evil. And I'm like, no, guys, this is the thing that we were walking away from. You cannot bring purity culture into witchiness and not call it just rebranded old stuff. So that's the energetics that we're playing with. And it's so deeply important to go under the hood and find the inner workings of why we're doing what we're doing, where that came from, and what is the practice that's right for us.
For sure. And I just wanted to add that, in the beginning, I think in the first, part of this, these first 5 years or so, it's going to feel the most intense because it's new, it's harsh. And it has felt like a harsh reality, I think, for many people. Not that there's not beautiful things. There have been many beautiful things. We can talk about that. But this side of it, and in some ways, we've really burst into this warrior energy of, I've got to cut everything off that isn't helping me. I've got to be on this side. I've got to be a pioneer, or I've got to go it alone. And also, as we talked about in our episode about the eclipse recently, this energy of the only thing that is real is what is now in the present. Like, that's the only thing, being very present. So I think, Kayelee, do you want to add anything to that before we jump in?
I have a bunch of thoughts rolling through my head right now. And it's just really interesting what both of you have said, especially what Jaye Anne just said about, like, in the more witchy circles, there's like this purity culture showing up with a different name and almost this sense of like there are witch hunts happening. And I see this with like AI usage too. And as somebody who has their feet in the world of organized religion still, and in the world of like spirituality, is looking in both directions, it's really interesting to realize like everyone outside of me is going to have an opinion about where I am. And a lot of people are going to think I'm wrong and I'm bad or I'm misled. But for me, inside the experience, it's very much this case of like, okay, am I in alignment with my own values? What are my own values? And can I take what is good and what I feel genuinely led to from both camps, so to speak? And also just this idea of like, the split is the illusion. The split is the illusion. It's all the same thing. It's kind of like when people talk about politics and they're like, it's two wings and they're on the same bird. That's basically what this is in a lot of ideological things as well. And so I think it's going to be quite the ride for all of us to sit in that energy. And I'm looking forward to seeing what comes out in this episode for supporting people in really coming home to that sense of like, okay, I am the steward of my own life. Can I trust myself to discern and to not require somebody else to tell me this is good, this is bad, and instead grow very strong in my own capacity for discernment, and also have the humility to realize that sometimes I'm not going to have the whole story, and be willing to adjust when there's new information or new discernment coming through.
Yes. I think the new information piece is what we grapple with often, and we'll get into a lot of that. But when there's something that's new, the first thing to do is reject it. And sometimes just call it evil and say, oh, this is bad and wrong and evil, and I will get nowhere near it. So let's get started. Okay, so we have to start talking about psychology and how we even form an opinion, form a belief system, form those base things that make us feel like these rules are the core rules of life, and that's what makes me feel safe. Because that's where we're really starting from when we're calling something evil. The first thing we're thinking is either it's going to threaten my safety or it's going to threaten the safety of my community. Yeah, but it's very much about safety. So who wants to start with the psychology?
So I'll lay some groundwork here. A lot of people won't know this about me, but a big part of my degree was in communications. And part of what I did for a while was I had courses and mediation courses all about how do you talk to people about really hot topics, like about really divisive topics. How do you even talk to people? And a lot of that required understanding. The first thing I would teach people about how do you have hard conversations is this psychology piece. And it's this piece of you as the adult are not actually running the show. Your inner child, this 7-year-old child, is running the show. So when we are born, up until we're about 7 years old, I mean, there is some discussion in the literature. Some people say 7 or 8. Some people say this phase can go until you're even a teen, 13, 14. But those first 7 years, at least, really your subconscious is wide open. And what I mean by that is you are like a sponge and you're just taking literally everything in. And what people tell you is true, your mind will believe that that is true. And the reason for that, your brain is doing this because we are pack animals and we are trying to learn how to stay in the pack so we can survive. That's a huge part of it is what are the rules and obligations that I have that will keep me safe? Like Jaye Anne said, how do I not die? And so a lot of learning how not to die is all about believing the same opinions and the things that the people around you say, the things that you observe, and taking those as truth. And so we develop a whole core belief system by the time that we are 7. And after that time, and maybe even longer, after that time, we kind of have a wall. Okay, we get a wall between our conscious and our unconscious brain. And that wall, the job of that wall is to reject anything that might hurt us. Anything that might jeopardize our safety is rejected by that wall. And so what happens is, you're still in your subconscious mind, which has all your core beliefs, which is running the show of everything you're doing. It's still 7 years old. So you still have this little 7-year-old that still has all these beliefs. And if you come in contact with a 7-year-old, think about what they believe. Many of them believe that Santa Claus is real. Many of them believe, in lots of different things. They will believe what you teach them to believe. And so there's this part of us that is going to reject and be afraid if someone says something scary to us. And so what that becomes is when we get confronted with information that doesn't fit in the schema of our brain, that doesn't fit with our core belief system, we feel what is called cognitive dissonance. So anything that challenges your framework will bring on cognitive dissonance. And we've been able to see this in actual real time in brain scans. There have been plenty of studies of people doing actual brain scans and being shown conflicting beliefs, things that they don't believe and things that, might trouble their beliefs. And what happens is their brains light up and they become either angry, scared, fearful, or guilty. So it triggers like shame, blame, anger. And that's why we're either trying to fight the cognitive dissonance. So we're trying to attack, which is like you get angry, you yell, or you want to run away from the cognitive dissonance, which is like separating yourself, cutting off friendships, cutting people out of your life. You try to ignore it or rationalize it. Or later, this is the hardest part, you might try to integrate it. But usually people don't. Most of the time, people become either angry or scared. So I think that's the big foundation.
I want to give an example that's going to be a little too on the nose and probably piss a lot of people off. So you can get that out of the way right away. And it's from my personal life. This happened to me. And I think this is a common story. When I was a child, I grew up, born again, evangelical, Bible believing, charismatic Christian. And what does that mean? It means a lot of things that we're seeing in the news today. What did it mean for me as a child is I was told that if I don't accept Jesus into my heart, I will go to hell. Right? That's a very specific time to push this kind of belief into a child. Okay? Everything that Julie just said, if you do this, you're going to create a very deep fear in the child that anything that they do outside of this specific set of rules is going to be eternal death. Yikes. I don't know what that means as a 5-year-old, as a 3-year-old, but what it does mean is scary, terrifying. Don't do it. So when I became an adult and I see people doing this stuff, I could not get curious because I was terrified. And furthermore, I was given sort of this visual of the slippery slope that the devil is going to kind of feed you good feelings until you are now entrapped. And so I couldn't trust my feelings, and I couldn't ever go against anything somebody in the church said, ever. Or that was an extension of this accepting Jesus into your heart. It was more than just an energetic thing. It was accepting the absolute authority of every single person in the church, and every adult is over me and I am nothing, into my heart, right? That's what that really meant for me. So going outside of that, terrifying, will die, right? I deeply understand the fear that a lot of people are having around these sort of woo-woo topics, these sort of deeply feminine topics, because I lived it. Not because I'm like, hey guys, I had a tough life. Like, yes, other people had tougher lives. This specific fear, this is why I'm even here. This one. So, integration is exactly the best way to find the right combination of understanding and then finally be set free from some of these beliefs. You have to even go there and give yourself permission to sit in that fear and that anger, whatever it is, before you can even consider it. Otherwise, it's just going to be this like, nope, not doing it. Nope, not doing it. Sort of like when I can't reference Harry Potter anymore either because it's evil. Even by the witchy people, it's evil. But I've never seen an example of this anywhere before or since. So I'm going to reference it. But there was a specific spell where they had this like big World Cup, right? They had a specific spell where when you go up against it, and if you're like a normie, right, the muggles, if they went up against and found, they were like curious, if they go in the woods and find this like big stadium, the spell would go, you know what? I had to do my laundry. I'm going to go do my laundry, right? That is exactly what cognitive dissonance does to us, is we go up against this uncomfortable thing and I should go do my laundry. Or it's just like, whoosh, I don't even know what was happening. Or there's fear and anger and all of that. So that is my example.
I love that example that you just gave with the Harry Potter reference, because like, I still love Harry Potter. I do. I very much do. And like what you described of like bumping up against that, it lines up really well with things that Julie's already said. But as you were talking, I was thinking about what I know about hypnosis and hypnotherapy. And like my husband trained as a clinical hypnotherapist, so using hypnosis therapeutically. And in that framework, there's this idea of there's a critical faculty that develops around the age of 8. So this lines up with the psychology that Julie was talking about. And it essentially is like what you just described, Jan, where it's like, hey, this thing, nope, it's gone. Like it's going to bounce off. And part of the beauty of that and the not so beautiful part of that is that children, before they develop that critical faculty, yes, they are wide open. They are just absorbing everything. They're honestly walking around as if they were in a hypnotic state all the time. And as adults, if somebody says to us, hey, there's a purple hippopotamus in the hall, we're not going to believe that for a second. But a little kid might, because of that not having that critical faculty. And as an adult, you get to decide Like, okay, do I want to suspend the critical faculty, not to just take something in willy-nilly, but to allow myself to be curious about the thing so that then I can assess the thing and then decide from a intuitive and logical place if this is something that I want to bring into myself or associate with or have some sort of connection with. And like, when people talk about hypnosis, I mean, hypnosis is something that a lot of people are scared of. They think it's potentially evil, bad, wrong, whatever, that someone's going to control them, control their mind. But what it really is like, especially if you are utilizing self-hypnosis techniques, you become the driver of the critical faculty instead of being driven by the critical faculty. You are driving the bus instead of sitting at the back wondering, who the heck is driving this thing? Where are we going? And like, being able to get into a hypnotic state is a lot easier than people think it is. You do it every day as you're falling asleep and as you're waking up. But even things like just getting really connected to your body, taking really deep breaths, slowing down so that your mind just kind of is observing all the things and not really wanting to do anything about it, but just be there. Even things like rolling your eyes up and like looking at the ceiling and your eyes kind of start bouncing, like that helps drop you into a hypnotic state. Like, I'm kind of jumping the gun saying like, hey, if you want to play with your critical faculty and be curious about things without having to automatically take them in, like look up self-hypnosis techniques because they're really valuable for that.
Yeah, I think that's a great point. And we are definitely going to give people, the goal of this is to give people tools to help them not to feel like exactly what Kayelee said. You don't have to believe everything and you don't have to think everything is evil either, that we can actually be sovereign and control what we believe, what we choose to believe, and be able to see past, shame, blame, anger, cognitive dissonance, all those kinds of things. And I just wanted to point out, this is the reason that people lose their minds at each other, right? Like, this is the reason that a completely reasonable person can be totally reasonable. And then you bring up something, you get into a discussion about a heated topic, maybe politics or maybe ideology, whatever it is. And all of a sudden that very reasonable person turns into an angry, yelling, screaming person. This is the same reason that, people who can be really close friends all of a sudden over one thing can break their whole friendship, is this cognitive dissonance piece. That is why it is so strong, right? This is so strong inside all of us. It happens to all of us. So I'm sure everybody can think of a time that this has happened to them. Just like think of a time where all of a sudden you were so angry about something or so scared. And I wanted to give some examples of how this shows up in real life. And for me, in my own life, that made me kind of question and be like, oh my goodness, like people can believe anything. Like you can think that anything is evil. You can think it. So like Jaye Anne gave her example about the way that she was raised. But I just want to tell a couple stories for me that were like, whoa, I thought this thing was so good, but somebody else thought, it totally different. So when I lived in New York City, I met a woman who was part of the Falun Gong. And if you know what the Falun Gong is, it is a group in China that is kind of against the Chinese government. A lot of them have escaped to America, but a lot of them, they are those monks who will sit and burn themselves in the street, like alive. They burn themselves alive in protest, in peaceful protest. And they do peaceful protest against, like, in China, you cannot have any kind of religion. There's only one party, right? It's only the Communist Party, et cetera, et cetera. And she had been part of the Falun Gong. And I had another friend who was also Chinese, but she was not Falun Gong. She was raised totally as a typical Chinese person. And we were chatting with her, chatting about religion, beliefs and stuff. And my friend kept being like, don't listen to her. Please don't listen to her. And I was like, why? And she was like, she is evil. She is bad. And I was like, what? She's evil? She's bad? Like, because the things she was talking to me about was like, wow, it's so great that you get to have your own beliefs in America. Wow, it's so great that you can believe and have your own religion, or you have freedom to do this, to do that. And, we talked about a little bit about like the one child laws and, all of those kinds of things. And she was telling me like, it's so great. We have this freedom. And my friend was like, she is crazy. Do not listen to her. She is evil. And afterwards, I did not realize, but after she left, my friend was like, she is part of the Falun Gong. The Falun Gong are evil because they oppose the Communist Party. I can't believe that you would talk to her. I can't believe that you would believe her. The Communist Party is like the best thing in the world. Literally, that's what she's telling me. Like her party is the best way. Like it's good that they don't have religion. All of these kinds of things. She was telling me that this other person was evil, which and she really believed it. Like she was so uncomfortable with this conversation. And it was one of the first experiences for me that I was like, wow, because most Americans, I think listening to this would be like, yeah, you should have freedom of speech. You can say what you want to say. You can believe what you want to believe. You can be friends with who you want to be friends with. And that is a good thing. But to her, right, this woman who wanted and protested because she went against the government, my friend was scared of her. My friend thought she was very evil because she had been told her whole life that they were evil. So that's just one example of like completely differing views. And I'll just give one more. I'm sure Kayelee and Jaye Anne have a lot of their own experiences to share. But I want to take another one, which for me, it's not a secret that I grew up in the LDS faith tradition and that I still go to church and all those kinds of things. And when I was young, we had what's called a temple open house. So temples are sacred places that Latter-day Saints go to, and they perform ordinances and they see it. Like my whole life was told the temple is the most sacred, beautiful place you can ever be in. And I had been to temples before and I had always felt like deep serenity, peace, beauty, love. Like I was like, oh, it's so beautiful. It's so lovely. And then we had a temple open house where I lived and we were so excited. I invited some of my friends because before a temple gets dedicated, before they say a special prayer over the temple, anyone can go in it. So anybody can go, anybody can see the temple. And so I invited some of my friends to go and some of my Christian friends to go through and to see the temple and have a good experience. And after that, I had a friend, he came to me and he was like, that place is evil. That's what he told me. He was like, I did not have a good feeling going through that place. Like it was scary to me because it was different. It made me uncomfortable. It's different than what I experienced in Christianity. And I was so shocked because I'd been through the same place, and I was like, wow, it's so beautiful. It's so peaceful. I love this place. But to him, because he had never experienced it before, it was scary and it was bad and evil. And I have had the same experiences. He invited me to go to his Baptist church. I've been to several Baptist churches and Pentecostal, and I felt so uncomfortable in his church. I felt so uncomfortable going there. I felt like it was evil, right? Like I felt like it was bad. It was scary. It was different. I was scared being there. And lots of people who are listening who have been to those kinds of churches are probably like, wait, how could you feel that way? It's a place of God. It's wonderful. But that's just the exchange. Like, because we were from different religions, because I'd never had that experience before, it seemed evil and scary to me. And the place that I thought was beautiful and peaceful seemed evil and scary to him. So it just goes to show, our cognitive dissonance can reach deep inside of us, even though there's probably no problem with either of those places. Both of those places are probably just fine and beautiful and great. But it was my framework and his framework subconsciously, the cognitive dissonance, that made us afraid.
Well, it's that idea of like what's familiar is safe, specifically because it is familiar, and how because of that, like if you grew up in a highly chaotic household where there was a lot of abuse or even just like some degree of emotional manipulation, it can feel unsafe to then like maybe find a romantic partner later in life who's really emotionally stable and treats you really well because it's not familiar. And it doesn't necessarily mean that it's bad or wrong, but you might reject the experience because it is different from what your brain has labeled as this is familiar, this is safe. We know what to expect here. Even if it kind of sucks or is scary or is awful. And so the same thing can happen with things that seem really good. And that's part of why people struggle so much with this idea of like, well, how do I determine what's good or bad? Like if my framework is like, this is comfortable, this is familiar, like how do I then discern? How do I figure that out? Like, I don't want to be in relationships that are, quote unquote, dysfunctional because that's what I'm used to. Like I want something different. And I think that is what this episode in a lot of ways is about. Is like, okay, how do you discern when you have this psychology, when you have this programming, when you have this stuff that forms your foundation from when you were a child? And yeah, I'm excited to get more into like, okay, what do we do with all of this?
So how do we know it's not just cognitive dissonance versus how do we know when it is? What are some hallmarks of when we should be going, this may be fine, but I'm reacting to it, versus this is a genuine threat to my well-being in some way, whether it's emotional, mental, physical, and I should listen to it. Because we talk a lot about intuition and how important your intuition is. But now we're throwing in this, there's also some sneaky thing from when you were a child that could be screwing that up. And how do we know the difference?
Pay attention to your knee-jerk reactions. If like you encounter something and your immediate response is like hard rejection, hard no, or intense fear or intense anger, there's a really good chance that there's some underlying like that there's some degree of cognitive dissonance. And it doesn't mean that the thing you reacted to is actually for you and you should just go for it. It means it's an opportunity to assess like, okay, what is actually going on? Is this something that I need to learn a little bit more about? Is there something in me that I'm like being confronted with because I've encountered this thing? And shadow work, it's a shadow work opportunity. But yeah, for me, like, it's a big, I hesitate to say red flag, but it's a big flag saying, hey, pay attention if I have this knee-jerk, really strong reaction to something.
I find that there's usually a mental teleportation that happens without my awareness. And if I start to become aware of it, then I can tell the difference between like intuitive stuff and cognitive dissonance. So I'll give you two different visuals that tend to come up for me, and they're sort of similar. So if you think about like, say you have a piece of paper and you had written on the piece of paper with clear crayon, like wax, right? And then you try to use marker and you go and write on the paper where the wax is, you're going to slide off and you're just basically skip to the next part where there's paper. And that mentality is exactly what it is. So you've got to find a way to like scrape off the wax so that you can actually draw on it. Another one I like to use is like, there's a little bit of ice on the sidewalk and you just slide across the area. You're like, nope, I'm not dealing with this. And you sort of teleport to the next part of the sidewalk. And so when I feel that sort of like slippery teleportation feeling, I know this doesn't have anything to do with what's going on right now. And it has something to do with the past. Also, if the reaction doesn't make sense for the situation, you're typically being sort of teleported back in quote time in your own timeline, aware of awareness, and going, this is just like that situation and I need to behave as if it's the same situation. So this can happen whether it's just beliefs being spouted like we had talked about. It can also happen with trauma. And a lot of that happens and we get teleported back and go, this is the same level of unsafety and I need to behave as if it's that way. But then you look around and you have to start becoming aware of your current situation and go, okay, I am really angry about somebody asking me a simple question. If I'm not hungry, angry, lonely, or tired, maybe this is cognitive dissonance, right? If I'm well fed and have rested, and not raging for no other reason, this might be cognitive dissonance. And when it's a genuine intuitive hit, you feel more present, not less present. There's sort of like a white screen that happens when it's cognitive dissonance and jumping time back in time. Again, we're not actually jumping back in time. We're just going back to when we were a kid and letting the kid drive the bus is essentially what we're doing. When that happens, there's sort of this white screen that can happen at least in my periphery. And then I'm back there and I'm like, argh. So that's an example of becoming less present. But when it's an actual thing you need to pay attention to, you're going to be more present. You're going to feel more in your body. You're going to see reality more as reality and less as a general reaction. Yeah, those are my thoughts.
I love that you said that if it's intuition, you are more present. And if it's cognitive dissonance, you most likely are less present, because that just struck me as like, that's the perfect tell right there. Like, that's the perfect tell. Yeah. I'd never put that together before, but like looking back at my own experiences, like, here's an example. So when I was a kid, I had a lot of experiences with what felt like spirits. Evil spirits is what I labeled them at the time, because it felt like they hated me. It felt like they wished me harm. And so I came to associate any time that I like felt what maybe was a spirit as like, that's scary. That's something bad's going to happen to me. And when I was an adult, there was one point where I was in my in-laws' kitchen at night, and I saw something out of the corner of my eye in their living room, and immediately, like, overwhelming sense of fear, like visceral reaction, fear response, tightening in my gut. My body started almost shaking a little bit, because I felt this sense of like, there's a spirit in that room. And I was like, oh my gosh, this is horrifying. What's about to happen? But there was something in me that was like, wait, no, like there's more to this story. And so I like did the things that I do to calm myself down and get more present, and to connect to my higher power to gain clarity, and ask that if there's something here that intends me harm, like, let's clear it away. I don't want to deal with anything that's not here in a beneficial sense. And after I did that, then I felt this clarity and this, like, I was so much more present, and it just suddenly hit me like, that is a spirit, and that is a child. That is one of my unborn children coming to talk to me. Like, it just came so clearly, and I sensed them come closer to me, and I had this interaction with them. And at the time, I didn't know I was pregnant, but it was the spirit of the baby that I was pregnant with that I then found out a few weeks later that I was pregnant with. But because my experiences prior to that with spirits were, they mean you harm, bad things are going to happen, my first reaction to sensing that spirit, who meant me no harm whatsoever, was absolute terror. So just that, like, presence and non-presence, and like, if you can't figure out what it is, maybe can you get present? And then you'll be able to discern from that point, do I get more present, or do I start to like need some space from this thing? Anyway, that's just an example that popped into my head of like how that actually has played out in my life.
I think that's a great example. And I think so much of the underlying is like this idea that ignorance breeds fear or contempt. And that's what it says in the scientific literature and in the studies, that the less you know about something, the more afraid you become of it, and the more angry you get about it, and the more likely you are to react angrily. So, and you know, people have known this throughout all of time. Think about Plato's The Cave. You think about the cave, which is this allegory of, you know, all these people are chained up. They've got these puppets on the wall that people are seeing. They think this is their whole life, is this cave. Then someone is able to get out. They go outside. They see the outside world. They come back and to share with everybody, hey, guess what? There's a whole world out there. You're chained up and there's a whole world out there. And what do the people do? The people don't say, yay, let's go out. They say, you're evil, and they try to kill him, right? They try to kill this guy who gives them information. And so ignorance, and we see this in study after study, that ignorance breeds fear. It breeds contempt. So when we're thinking about, is it cognitive dissonance or not? The first thing you have to ask yourself is, how much do I actually know about this thing? Do I know anything about it? Do I understand it? Do I know it? Or is it completely foreign to me? Because the more foreign it is, the scarier it's gonna seem. And I kind of came up with these ideas that might help put it into perspective too, of like, okay, I know if I don't know anything about it, then the next question to ask yourself is it physically hurting people? Is this thing physically hurting people? Are those tarot cards physically hurting that person, right? Like, is that what's happening? And then you can ask questions like, what are the fruits of it? Like, what are the fruits for other people? What are the fruits for yourself? Have you tried it? Do you know? Have you tried it? And then, of course, you guys touched on these too, but whenever we have fear or anger, especially when it seems out of balance, like especially when it seems like, wow, that's an inordinate amount of anger for this question or this thing or for this situation, we really have to ask ourselves like, okay, how is your health and nutrition? How's your nervous system? Are you just frazzled? Are you hungry? Are you angry because of that? Because everything's going to seem scarier and more annoying when we are hungry, when our nervous systems are frazzled, when we're already scared. And then you got to ask yourself after that, like, is this something you were taught was wrong when you were a kid? Because that's going to really play into it. When you were young, how were you taught about this? Were you taught that this was shameful? Were you taught that this was bad? Because that's going to play into your reaction to it. If you were taught that it was bad, you are much more likely to have cognitive dissonance. It's not necessarily that it's the devil. It doesn't mean that it's good either. Like sometimes it could be bad. It could still be something you do not want to participate in, but we need to take into account, okay, when I was young, how was I taught about this? How was this handled in my home? Because that's going to really play into it. And then, of course, like, does it challenge your deeply held beliefs? Because if it challenges your deeply held beliefs or your ideology, then yes, most likely it's going to be cognitive dissonance that you're feeling if it's challenging your ideology. And then, are you afraid that you're going to get in trouble with somebody? That was the last question. Are you afraid you're going to get in trouble? If you are answering yes to some of these questions, then it's definitely cognitive dissonance. And again, that does not mean that it's necessarily for you or something you have to do or that it's good, but it does mean we got to take a second look at this. We've got to slow our roll. We've got some stuff to work out. We've got, this is probably not just the devil. It's probably a little bit of me too. And I need to take a couple breaths. So those were my big questions. Do you ladies want to add to that? I did have something about what you were saying about intuition, but I'd love to hear if you guys have thoughts on those.
Well, just to jump it just real quick, if someone hands you a deck of cards and you start having heart palpitations, that's not the devil. That's fear. That's fear.
Yes, exactly. Yes.
And I'd just like to emphasize something that you already said, Julie, because I know that a few years ago, me listening to this podcast episode would have needed this emphasis. It's that you don't actually have to try all these things to be able to discern whether it's for you or not. Like, you don't have to try heroin to know if it's for you or not. You don't have to try going to this church or that church to know if it's for you or not. You don't absolutely have to do the thing. But learning more about it from multiple sources who have different biases can help you gain a handle on like, okay, wait a minute. Did I have maybe some misinformation or some partial information about this thing? And from that point, you can then decide, oh, do I actually want to experience this thing for myself to then make a decision? Or do I want to make a decision about this based on what I've observed in other people? Either way is fine. Like, there's not a right or wrong way. You don't have to try all the things. You don't have to not try the things. It's just deciding for yourself from a sovereign space. Do I want to learn from other people's experiences, observing them, and that be what I do? Or do I actually need to have my own experience with the thing or the belief or the whatever so that I can actually make a decision for myself? And then there are some things where it's like, it's okay if you don't dive deep into that thing to find out if it's for you. Not every single belief that you encounter is one that you have to decide if you're going to integrate it. Yeah, do you want to not be really fearful and dismissive of other people who have that experience or that belief? Yeah, I mean, to be a decent human being, you probably don't want to be a jerk to just somebody because you didn't look at why you find their belief triggering. But you don't have to dive into everything because that can be very exhausting. And as somebody who's very much a completist, my tendency is to want to dive into all the things, and I literally cannot. So I just want to put that out there for people who maybe are a little bit like me, that you don't actually have to try everything, and you don't actually have to get down to the root of every single thing. Use good judgment. You know yourself, and if you feel like you don't know yourself, you can get to know yourself.
I think this is really important, because if someone receiving a deck of cards gives them heart palpitations, that's not the place to start. That's not how you comfortably start to unwind some of these beliefs in the first place. As you do what Kayelee said, you learn about it, you think about it in different ways, you bring it in a different light, learn from people with very different biases than yours. Because if you just talk to the people who believe the same as you, then you're going to get just the same stuff. But yeah, jumping in with both feet may be good for some people, but it's not for everybody. And that can cause more harm than good.
Yeah, Kayelee is really great at talking about the tender edge, going to the tender edge, right? Especially if it's like such a visceral response, there's probably some trauma inherent in that response. And so when we're dealing with trauma, we want to be very careful that we don't go over the edge and we don't do too much, but we just go enough to where it pushes us a little bit. We're a little uncomfortable, but we can handle it. And so I think Jaye Anne's right. Like, if it's too much for you, maybe that's not the place to start. Maybe the place to start is just asking people who are interested in it questions about that thing. And I do think the learning, like Jaye Anne said, from different biases is really important. Learning from people who like it and dislike it is really important. Talking to people who really have used it is important, especially if you're not going to try something. It's important to talk to people who really use it in their life as well, because they're going to have experience that you don't have and that the people who don't like it probably don't have. But also in the scientific literature and the studies, what we see is when we come up against something that is against our ideology or is fundamentally different than what we were taught as a child, oftentimes our biggest response, our first response, of course, is rejection, but then it is to down on our own beliefs.
Yeah.
So that is what happens most of the time. Is the first thing is, oh, I reject that. That is evil, wrong, bad. And I'm going to double down and say it's even more evil, wrong, and bad. And I have got to get, disassociated with it.
I always wanted to have a bumper sticker that said, this bumper sticker will also simply reinforce your existing beliefs. Because
that is the best.
Because I used to see all these political bumper stickers that say one, and I was like, people who agree with that are going to double down. People who disagree with that are only going to double down on the belief they hold. It's in the opposite. Not that these aggressive statements never change anybody's mind. They just polarize. And that's not more. We don't need more of that.
Exactly. And that's why curiosity is the most important, because curiosity is what can open you up and open up that wall and help your intuition come in and keep you from either running away, getting angry, or doubling down. Is asking those questions. We got to ask questions. We got to continue to be curious. And I wanted to just get an example of this, and I will talk about this a little bit more in our tarot episode, which is coming up. But one of the reasons we wanted to do this episode is I actually had some friends who were very close to me decide that they did not want to have a relationship with my family anymore. And tarot was part of that. That we, in a sense, very much for them was they had this really evangelical Christian awakening, and they felt like the things that we were doing were not Christian enough. These practices are not good or evil. And it's interesting because as I had talked to her, she didn't really give me any chance to respond or to really talk to her or anything. It was really just a voice note and bye, see you later, no contact. So we did never get to really chat about it more deeply. But what I had seen after that was that the belief system for her, she had said, when I was a kid, I was told that tarot was bad and evil. And so she doubled down on her belief, right? She doubled down on what she'd heard. She felt a lot of guilt and a lot of shame about having that around her. And so that was very much part of the reason that she decided she had to disassociate and run away from our family, right? Because we're part of the evil, we're part of the bad, we're part of the shame. And for her, right, it's let's double down on this belief. And everything she said, it was very interesting because it felt very fear-based, but it was a lot of, when you're with me, I feel so good. When you're with me, when you're around, like, I really love you. I think it's so fun to like be with you, and you bring so many good things into my life, but I've got to shut you out because God is more important than you, and you must be doing something wrong, right? And like those cards, made me feel scared. They made me feel dark or evil when no one else felt that way, right? She was the one who had this reaction. And again, it's because of her it was a big cognitive dissonance, and she didn't want to talk through it or ask questions about it. So maybe tarot isn't right for her. I have a lot of compassion for her because I had been in that situation before. I have been in similar ways, just like Jaye Anne was saying, like I have lived through the same thing of like, these things are evil. This must be evil. This stuff is really bad. And these things, energy work, man, that's got to be really evil. All these kinds of things. Yeah. I have lived through it really and felt those kinds of things before. And so it's not coming from a place of condemnation. It's not coming from a place of like anger in any way, but it was an observance. Like I observed that the behavior was, let's double down, and I don't want to ask questions. I don't want to be curious. I don't want to learn or have a discussion. And then it became, to other people who were in that group, very condemnation based on her side. And so that was a really interesting that then it became like, this is evil, this is bad, and you are doing it, and that is evil and bad, and we have to be on completely separate paths. So just wanted to say, like, it's totally okay if that's not for her and her life, but I think it is still okay to be friends with people who have different beliefs than you. And hopefully this episode helps us, even if it's not for you, like Kayelee said, even if you don't want to try it, it's not for you. Again, please measure that against these questions. Please measure that against, okay, maybe this is my cognitive dissonance, but hopefully this can help you understand, okay, I'm just having cognitive dissonance about this. Maybe it's good, maybe it's bad, but I can still put reasonable boundaries up and be friends with this person and still talk to these people. It doesn't have to be this thing where it becomes hate, it becomes anger. And then I just wanted to say also, like with telling the difference, just to summarize what you guys had said already, that fear is loud. Intuition is quiet. Intuition is knowing. Fear is frantic, right? It's frantic. It's confusion. It's frantic thoughts. It's repetitive thoughts. Anger is usually tied to fear. And like Kayelee said, intuition makes you feel more present. It's a knowing. It's a surety. It's not, oh my gosh, I got to get out of here. This is I'm going to die. Like those kinds of things are going to be more fear, more anger.
Can I share another thing from my life that I think is really valuable for everything that you just said? Like kind of combining multiple things from like, maybe it's just not for you, not that it's bad or evil. And then also, well, I'll just tell the story and it'll start to make sense. So I don't know, maybe 7 years ago, my husband was getting into like ketogenic eating. He was way into keto. And I at first was like, no, and then I started learning a little bit about it. And I was like, okay, like maybe this would be beneficial. Maybe this would be helpful. I watched him doing it and I was like, I mean, there's some good things. There's some things that don't seem so good. And then this is where things got kind of interesting because I started going with, well, my husband's doing it like logically, like from what I've read, this should be good for my body. But I kept having this sense of like unease, not terror, not fear, unease, like something's not quite right here. And I ignored it. And I tried to do the whole keto thing. And I ultimately ended up with some significant health problems because of ignoring my intuition about this thing that actually can be beneficial and can be detrimental depending on how you're doing it and what your body is like and what your body is needing. And I actually ended up having a surgery in the end because of all of that, because of ignoring my intuition. And so just sometimes it will be our emotions that kind of lead us in a direction that's not necessarily beneficial. Like the fear can run away with us, the anger can run away with us, but sometimes the logic is what runs away with us. And so just being really wise about, like, am I talking myself into or out of this thing when something in me knows that it's not for me or knows that it is for me? And am I letting my emotions to run away from me when something in me is saying, no, wait, like we actually need to engage with this, or no, wait, let's gather some information before we make a decision. Hi, it's Kayelee. If you've been listening to this show for a while, you already know about the Feminine Power Line. Black Moon Lilith, the Eve Point, that axis in your chart that holds both the exiled feminine and the desiring feminine. You know the words. You've heard them. Maybe you've thought about them. But there's a difference between knowing the words and actually turning the light on. The Feminine Power Line self-paced course is where that happens. It's not a lecture. It's an experience. Guided journeys, somatic reflections, and a full reference library of interpretations for your exact placements. So you can sit with your own chart and actually feel what's been living there. Feel it and reclaim it. Women who've gone through the course say the same thing. I didn't expect it to hit that deep. The first 25 students get founding student pricing at $97. After that, it's $147. You can find the link to check it out and to purchase in the show notes of this episode. If the Feminine Power Line has been calling you, this is where you answer.
I think that's a great point. And I think it's also good to say, like, there's also seasons, and sometimes something's not right for you in a certain season. And then maybe later you'll feel drawn to that thing, you know? It's totally okay. We're all going to have blind spots also, just like Kayelee was saying, like, we're all going to have blind spots in our life. There's always going to be things that we don't know that we don't know, and then we just won't know that we don't know them. You know, like there's going to be those things. But I think this is about just doing the best that you can, you know, in the season that you're.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. Like, for example, I couldn't start with tarot cards. The first cards I started with were oracle cards. My gateway was angel cards because that was the only one that would possibly be of God, right? And then archangels, even. This is the godliest of cards. And then I moved forward and it got a little bit less blindingly bright and more into like some nuance of color and shadow and darkness and recognizing that. And it was probably like a good, I want to say like 6 or 7 years into my healing journey and getting into energy work before I even touched tarot. Because I just couldn't. Everyone's going to be different. But one thing I want to make sure that's said, because I'm going to pivot into the next part. The only belief that I think we all need to unwind, everyone, is that my way is the only way for everyone. That is the key belief everyone needs to unwind. Everything else is just variations on a theme. Everything else is just different colors of the rainbow. But the one thing that we all need to be clear about is what is true for me can be different than what is true for you. And I'm not talking about some things that people are calling airy-fairy, wishy-washy belief systems. What I'm talking about is this is the part of the journey I'm on, and it doesn't have to look like yours. This is the part of my life that I'm living, and you are different. We have no idea what someone else is thinking. We have no idea what other people are doing. We have no idea what path they are on. This is the part where it's like, okay, woo-woo. But we're literally just our own bubbles, sort of living our lives in our own movie screens and our own experiences. And you don't know the person next to you as well as you think you do. What you are mostly doing is projecting your own belief system onto that person and then judging them for that. And that's not okay. So we do not all have to have the same belief systems. That's why freedom of religion is a thing in America. Hello. That's the whole point. The whole dang point. and no more trying to control what someone else believes. You can just say, that's not for me. That's okay. That can be just not for you. That can be just not for me. I've never touched a Ouija board because I don't know if that's for me, right? But I know tons of people who that's one of the things that they feel really, really connected to. Is not for me. I don't judge them. I don't think they're doing something bad and wrong and evil. I just don't do it myself. Maybe one day I will. I don't know. Right? There's a phrase that says like, the thing that you say you'll never, ever, ever do is probably the thing you'll end up doing. Okay? Because that's how that goes.
Amen. Amen. I think that's like the most important thing is one, the goal here is to help you recognize when there might be a belief that needs unwinding, right? When is it this cognitive dissonance? And two, just understanding how exactly what Jaye Anne said, everybody is different. And if we're going to heal the divide, we have to be okay with that. We have to be okay that our belief system's not the same. And I made a reel about this recently, but like even the three of us as co-hosts have very different beliefs. We have very different ideologies. We are aligned on many things, and that's why we can make the podcast, but we're also very, very different. And, you know, I've had interviews where people will say things and I'll be like, look, I would never say that. That is not a thing to say. But do we edit those people? No, we don't edit those people. You know, when they come on, we let them come on. And yes, we still are choosy about who comes onto the podcast and blah, 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 all of that kind of thing. But it's about knowing that, trusting one, that our audience can discern for themselves. And they are smart enough to discern for themselves. And two, being able to be okay that everyone's on a different path and a different journey. And, you know, in the beginning for me, I was like, oh no, people are going to think I'm like this and people are going to think about I'm like that because this person said this thing. And then I just had to let that go and be like, who cares? It doesn't matter. They won't know all of who you are. No one in this world who's living in this world will know all of who you are. That's just the truth of it. And there's someone who's going to misunderstand you. There's going to be times you feel misunderstood. And that can be the most triggering thing of all. That can be incredibly painful to feel misunderstood. But I think another thing about Neptune being in Aries is that it's time to let go of that. We have to let go of caring so much about what people think about us. And I think honestly, part of that will help to bring unity because we won't be pretending so much. We won't be beholden so much to what the crowd thinks and what other people think. And so hopefully this episode is helpful in bringing people together and letting you know, like, it's okay if you're different than your friends. You know, it's okay if people are different than you, and it's okay if they misunderstand you. And hopefully you can use this as a tool to help you to keep good friendships and grow good friendships and just be mindful, a mindful steward of your own sovereignty.
I'd like to add to that really quickly. For those of you who are listening, please, 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 please do not abdicate your discernment to us. Like just because we're into something, just because we talk about something, even if it's something often, like astrology, for example, just because we're into it, just because it's for us does not necessarily mean it's for you. And even if it is for you, maybe it's not for you right now. Because in my journey with astrology, there was a period of time where if I had been into astrology, I probably would have used it purely as a weapon against myself to tear myself down and to see why I was broken and bad and whatever. And so the development of my relationship with astrology was in a lot of ways perfect because I began to learn about it at a time when I was more open to truly seeing myself clearly. And then it became a tool for doing that more completely. And so just because I've had that experience doesn't mean that whatever I have that experience with is for you and doesn't mean it's for you right now. So please, your own discernment. We are not your authorities.
Yes.
No, do not step away from your religion and follow us. No, thank you.
Yeah, seriously. And I think we've said this before, but we do not want to be gurus. We've never wanted to be gurus. We've never wanted to be authorities. Like our job is just the digging and the researching and presenting of information so you can do with it what you would like. And, you know, we give our own takes on everything, but we're not here to replace. That's the whole point. That's the whole point of this episode is you have to use your own sovereignty, your own discernment. Like it's your job. Does anyone have anything else to say before I pivot this conversation?
Let's do
I
it.
just want to add again really quick something else. Sorry, I've got a lot to say now. It's that just to piggyback on what was just said, even and then listening to us, you may think that you know what we each individually believe. You may think you know what we do and do not do in our personal lives. And surprise, you probably don't actually know.
That's so true.
I just went down an existential rabbit hole and now I'm like, I don't even know what they're thinking I think about me.
And quite frankly, there are days where each of us is not entirely sure what we think or believe or what the other people think or believe. So like, please don't come to any conclusions based on what you think one or all of us believe or do or don't do. Now, Julie, go for it.
Thank you.
Where are we going? I don't even know.
My pivot is just, it's just a quick thing, but it's the question about, but what about the devil? What about him? What about the devil? And so what about the devil? And I'm sure all of you have many commentaries about the devil. Someday I'm like, we need to do a full episode just about the devil. Anyway, but what I want to say is like, yes, we're saying all these things. And I think we've been pretty clear about like not everything's for everybody and that's okay. But I did want to bring up for people who are like, but sometimes there really is bad stuff. Yes, sometimes there really is bad stuff. There's a lot of shadow in this world. There's a lot of things that are evil in this world. They do exist. Like polarity exists. So bad things do exist. And I personally believe, yes, there are probably bad spirits that intend you harm and sometimes. And I would say also that those things do exist. And most of the time, in my personal opinion, it's usually us. It's usually not the bad spirit. And I'll give an example of this. I saw a post from someone who was saying that they were haunted by evil spirits constantly, that there were evil spirits all the time. There were evil spirits and that their animals were begging them to get rid of the evil spirits. But no matter how many times they cast out in the name of Jesus, the evil spirits wouldn't go away. And no matter what they did, no matter where they were, just so many evil spirits. And there was no way for them to get out of this house. There was no way. There's just portals constantly opening up. And when we're in a situation like that, I do not want to demean in any way this person's experience at all, because it can be incredibly frightening. But I would say most likely, if there is constantly evil spirits, then it is not really about the evil spirits. It is really about you. And what I mean by that is many times our brains, our nervous systems, especially if our nervous systems are shocked or frazzled, will often see things as evil more readily, like we've talked about. We'll often have that in our lives. And just like we talked about, our subconscious can tell us that an abusive relationship is a baseline. Our subconscious can also tell us we have to have badness in our life for our life to be good. We've got to have drama. We've got to have bad things. We've got to have, whatever it is. And in this person's case, I think that was playing out to their constantly being evil spirits or seeing evil spirits. And I don't want to say that this person didn't see evil spirits or they weren't real, but we do have to be honest about the fact that like sometimes there is mental instability and sometimes there is nervous system instability, and that leads to us feeling like there is more evil than there is in the world. And sometimes we are the ones bringing that into our lives without even knowing it. We bring it into our lives because we need to feel important. We bring it into our lives because we have this baseline that tells us that like, oh, these bad things are normal. We bring it into our lives because we have nutritional deficiencies and we're unable to see things properly. So I just want to say, yes, bad spirits exist. And lots of the times the bad spirits or the bad things are usually our shadow. It's usually us. And not to say they can't come, because I have had experiences with evil spirits. I have had experiences with, at least with the spirits that made me feel uncomfortable. And so I guess what I want to say is like, are you giving away your sovereignty to evil spirits? That's what I mean. Like, are you giving away your power? Because lots of times when things like this happen, it's because we give away our power. We're like, oh no, all these things must trample over me and I can't get rid of them. And they're so strong. And it's like, in my mind, I'm like, no, you're stronger than any of these spirits. You have your body. You have all of these things. Like, we give away our power.
Yeah, because I have had some clients like this, right? Most of them I refer out because I don't do possession. I don't do it. But when I see this, it's typically high trauma childhoods and or this is hard to quantify, so I don't want to make anyone feel like, oh, well, some people are more powerful than others. So, because they are. But people who have intense amounts of intuitive capabilities are magnets for this kind of thing. And a lot of times trauma and that goes hand in hand and creates this crazy crap storm of all of that. And that's not my realm of helping people. But that's usually what I see is that kind of thing going on with that type of person, particularly the trauma. That 0 to 7 stuff is so, so important. And if you've never felt safe in your entire life, then it makes sense that being attacked by you, like, okay, I have secluded myself from humans because I don't feel safe. So what is there to get me? Evil spirits. And that is often what I see there is like, I've had a lot of trauma and I don't deserve to feel okay. I don't deserve to feel safe. I don't deserve to feel worthy. And in those situations, absolutely get professional assistance however you can, because that is the only way to walk forward and finally feel safe and healthy and worthy again.
Yeah. And I just wanted to say along those lines, like what you put your attention on grows, right? What you put your intention on will multiply, and what you resist persists in many ways. And sometimes I think when we have this feeling of, I can never get rid of it, I can never get rid of it, a lot of that is us allowing it to grow in one way or another, whether or not that's because of our trauma from our childhood, or sometimes just giving away the fact that we do have power. And again, it's not that it doesn't exist or that it can't be so scary, because I have been in situations that felt very scary for me. But I think knowing that you have power over those things is really important.
Yes, absolutely. For most people, though, I will say the majority of the time, we're not dealing with true evil spirits. We're dealing with what Kayelee just said is, I sense a presence and I am real freaked out by that. And I'm going to call it evil. When you've experienced a lot of spirits, you kind of get a sense of like, okay, this one's fine. Okay, this one's really chatty. Okay, this one I don't really want to hang out with. So you can go over there to your corner.
Yeah. They're not evil, but I don't want them as my friend.
Right. They could be evil too. Like, also, like, go away, you know? It's not typically an actual attack, first of all. Like, initially. It's usually, oh, what is this? And for a lot of people who have had experiences as children, especially if you're in a high religious experience, this can be very scary. If the spirit doesn't show up in a specific manifestation, then it can be very, very scary. And it will feel like there's evil spirits after you all the time, because that's a scary experience. So if you had an interaction when you were a child and you're like, oh man, this is terrifying, kind of with your adult mind, go back and revisit that memory, because you may have actually absorbed pieces of awareness of that thing. And you can kind of look at it with your adult eyes and go, what does that thing really look like? What did that really, and I don't mean like energetically absorbed, memory absorbed awareness of that, and go, what was that? What did I feel? Why did I feel scared? Was it because of how it presented itself, or was there actually a darkness associated with it that I was like, no, go away? These are the important things as adults who have had childhood experiences to go and look at. And you may not want to, because again, it's scary.
Yeah.
Well, I was just going to emphasize, if that is happening to you and you feel attacked and you do feel like everything is the devil, my first sense, I think everything Jaye Anne said was really great and beautiful. And I think that we have to look at our foundations. Look at your foundations. And what I mean by that is, have you slept? Are you an insomniac? Are you having a hard time with that? How are your minerals? How is your nutrition? Have you eaten well? Are you well grounded? And if the answer to those questions are no, if your baseline, if your foundation is shaky, then I would turn to those things first. Of course, you can cast out, you can do all the things that you regularly do, but I would turn to those first as an answer, and like being curious about the entities, the spirits, the things, before just labeling it as like, oh my gosh, I'm constantly being attacked. We got to look at our foundation first. How's your vitamin D? How are you feeling in your body? Because those are the things that are going to let us know. The last thing I'll say about the devil, you guys can say whatever you'd like, is just noting that if you're listening to this, no matter what religion or creed you are, the idea of the devil has changed vastly over time. Vastly over time. And the idea of what is evil or bad has changed vastly over time. If we even look at this like biblically in the Old Testament and older texts, the devil is more like, the opposite. It's more like just an adversary, someone who is against you. And then the further we get after we get the Nicene Creed and after we get all these things, then the devil becomes impersonated. And before, we didn't really have a true impersonation of the devil, but then after we have the Nicene Creed and as we're taking over all these things, then we get this impersonation of the devil. And that's the one that has like the goat horns and the boobs, all the things that people think are scary now. And there are specific reasons that the devil looks the way that he does, and that after they've created that impersonation of him, which we've gone over and I'm sure we'll talk about more later. But even further than that, when we go into, the Salem witch era, the Puritan time, that is where we really get this idea that the devil is everywhere and in everything, and that everything that is not good. Of course, like the witch trials really, really burn this into our minds and hearts. No pun intended. But we get this idea that if I'm not doing something that is specifically related to my religion, that is the devil. And that's kind of the groundwork that all of us who are listening are working with, is that there's nothing neutral. It becomes that it's either the devil or nothing. It's either good or bad. And we need to kind of detangle ourselves from that. And that's why we're constantly asking ourselves, is it evil? Instead of just asking ourselves, what is it?
What is this?
Yes, what is this?
What is happening?
Yes, there's this constant like, is it evil? And it comes from all that foundation of what the devil is and what it means to us and how we feel that he is in every nook and cranny of what we experience if it's not directly related to God. And scientism has kind of helped with that. The Enlightenment era kind of helped with that, kind of made it worse, kind of helped. And we're still kind of dealing with that, because the other way is, okay, if it's not the good or evil, then it's nothing, right? Then it's all scientism. There's no spiritual. It must all just be what it is. And so we are, give yourself some compassion, because we're working with some big threads. We're working with some threads that are really tangled and some stuff that's really tangled on our hearts. And so I would just encourage people, yes, there is bad things. Yes, there can be bad presences, spirits, and things like that. Things can be evil. But when we untangle it, there's also a lot of things that are just neutral. And so ask yourself, instead of asking, is this evil? Is this bad? Just ask, what is this? What is it? So anything else you guys want to say about the devil in this?
Well, I have something that backtracks a little bit. So if somebody else wants to talk.
Well, the Nicene Creed, I just wanted to remind people that was like 400 AD, had nothing to do with Christ and had everything to do with empirical control. Like, that's the reason the devil exists in the form that he does, is for control by the empire and not because it's actually spiritual truth. So that's my weird little soapbox that everyone needs to know.
Okay, I'm going to backtrack a little bit. and just add a testimony to something that Julie said earlier, because it feels important to talk about. So Julie brought up going back to your foundations, including nutritional foundations, just the foundations of what you need to be able to function as a human being. And as most of you who've listened to this podcast probably know at this point, I had a baby last year and I ended up in the hospital for a week because of crazy complications with unexpected blood clots. And there was a period of time, it actually started a little bit before I ended up in the hospital, and then it continued a little bit after I got home. But there was a period of time where I felt like I was surrounded by evil things often. And I felt like my family was being attacked, and I felt like things were coming into my house. And I got to the point where I started actually seeing things a tiny bit with my actual physical eyes instead of how I normally sense things. And it was terrifying. And also, Julie's amazing and knows all kinds of wonderful things about birth and about the body. And she was like, Kayelee, are you getting enough sunlight? Are you moving enough? Do you have this vitamin? Are you getting this? Are you getting this? Are you getting this? Because I knew, I was like, I feel like I'm losing my ever-loving mind. And I'm pretty sure that I'm not actually being attacked by things right now. And so we stabilized my nutrition. I wasn't getting enough sleep. I mean, newborn babies and all kinds of things. Not babies, baby. There was one baby. And made getting my body supported, we made it like a life or death thing, because it was a life or death thing in a lot of ways. And once that was stabilized, and it actually stabilized pretty quickly, that all went away. All of it. Every bit of it. And I have had experiences with spirits in my life. Experiences that were terrifying, experiences that were amazing, and things in between. So sometimes what we think we're experiencing is not actually what we're experiencing. And if you don't have your body supported well, you might want to make sure that it's well supported before you make decisions about what you're experiencing.
Amen. That's beautiful, Kayelee.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Your intuition doesn't work very well if you don't have nutrients. It just doesn't. The pineal gland just does not work very well without nutrients. So
keep hydrated. It's important.
Your nervous system runs on water. Mm-hmm. I know, people are like, no, it doesn't, but it does. It's nerves and the electrolytes and the water that send the signal. So if you don't have enough water, you're not actually going to do anything. Where are we going next?
I think we're at our wrap up, really. I mean, the only thing that I was going to say is I think a lot of these things have grown in our consciousness, and a lot of these feelings of good and bad, just because we have, as a collective consciousness, kind of reinforced. And so,
yes.
Again, be patient with yourself. It's okay if you feel cognitive dissonance. It's okay if you feel anger. It's okay if you feel fear. It's okay if you feel any of the feelings. It's okay if you're unsure about things still, and you want to stay in the safety and comfort of your belief system. That's okay. Just recognizing is the first step. Just recognizing, okay, I may be triggered by something. There may be cognitive dissonance here, is really that first step. And again, just asking, what is it, rather than, is it good or evil? And allowing yourself to learn from it. So should we catch all, summary, wrap it up?
Yeah. Support your nutrition. Trust your intuition. Notice when you feel cognitive dissonance is going to feel like you're not as present, and intuition is going to feel more present. Did I say check your nutrition? Did I say eat the food? Did I say drink your water?
Watch your reaction. If your reaction is out of balance for the situation, right? Overly angry, overly scared, overly annoyed, then that is a little bit of a clue. There might be some cognitive dissonance. Remember to ask yourself some of those questions, right? How much do you actually know about it? Remember, ignorance breeds contempt. It breeds fear. So learn something from it first.
Knowledge is power. And whether we think that's bad or good is not the point. Knowledge is power. And if you cannot intentionally choose to disempower yourself when you come up against something, or it's just going to keep showing up again and again and again.
And one thing I think we've hit on it a little bit, I just wanted to add here is instincts and fear do have their place, right? They can be helpful when you are, walking to your van at 2 a.m. and you hear someone's footsteps behind you and you're like, oh, flip, I got to get to my car, right? Like those instincts are protective. And that's the whole point. Your body is not stupid. Your subconscious is not stupid. It's doing these things for a reason. That's the whole point. It's trying to protect you. So have compassion on yourself and the other person. The other people know, okay, their little 7-year-old is just trying to protect them. Their inner child is trying to protect them. My inner child is trying to protect me. My body is doing its best to protect me. And of course, in life or death situations, you don't need to stop and say, what is it? In those scary situations, follow your instincts. Fear can be a gift and keep you out of trouble. What we're talking about is more centered on ideology. It's more about ideology. It's more about politics. It's more about thought processes. That's what we're talking about. But just know, that yes, your body is beautiful. Your body has not betrayed you. It is trying so hard to help you. But now that you are aware that there is a 7-year-old running it and running your beliefs and your schemas, maybe we should just be a little more open-minded and ask more questions and look at the fruits of things instead of immediately pushing them away.
Mm-hmm. And I can imagine like there may be somebody listening to this who's like, but I can't discern. I can't figure it out. Like I just, blah, 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 blah. If you find yourself there, please be gentle with yourself. Most things are not going to be life or death. You don't have to figure it out right this second. And the more pressure you put on yourself, the more push there is, the more likely it is you're actually not going to discern clearly. Give yourself some space. If that means like take a little bit of a break from whatever it is that's kind of freaking you out, okay. If that means you give yourself permission to not know right now, that's okay. Like, please do not beat yourself up if you are struggling to discern, is this intuition? Is this cognitive dissonance? Is this the devil? Breathe, because most of the things that you will encounter are not actually going to be life or death. You do have some time to really sit with the thing or not sit with the thing.
Do we have any resources for people who want to learn more about this?
Well, I would say a lot of the stuff that helped me in learning about it actually comes from NLP, neuro-linguistic programming, which is...
That's the devil.
That's the devil, yeah. But psychology, learning the psychology from it. There are plenty of helpful sites out there that can help you with those things. I would also say with the cognitive part of it, you can look it up. We will have our sources listed below, some scholarly articles that you can read and go through as a help. But I think a lot of the things that we said are good. A lot of the things Kayelee said about being present, being in your body, asking yourself questions. Those are the things that I would usually tell people. I've thought about putting my course up again about how to have difficult discussions, and I may well do that. But right now, I think the best things that you can do is notice, ask yourself the questions, and just be open to learning. And of course, we can't make you talk to people who are different than you. You can't make someone associate with people. You can't make someone do that. I would also say just know that talking to people who are different than you can broaden your horizon and it can heal divides. And that is really what we need in this age of Aries, of the warrior, of fighting and fighting for our ideals. Maybe we need to try to heal the divide and be a peacemaker in some ways. Not that you can't be zealous for your own beliefs, but just by learning and truly understanding the other people around you.
Yeah. A really valuable book. Sorry, my voice is trying to go away. A really valuable book for learning about interacting with people who believe very differently from you, or being able to have legitimate, useful discussions when you are very ideologically different from another human being, is the book Nonviolent Communication.
That is a good
Such a good book. Such a good book. I don't remember now who wrote it, but
Rosenberg.
Thank you, Rosenberg.
Rosenberg.
Such a good book. Just wanted to drop that as a resource really fast.
That's a good one. I also, and that's the book's concept. Anytime you read about other people's personal experiences, somewhere else in the world, any of those types of books will help you a lot because it gets you out of your own situation and believing that everyone is just like you. The best thing for understanding how other people are is through travel. And well, what's the next best thing is reading books about people's personal experiences. I also want to plug our shadow work episode on this one. I think it's episode 3, because a lot of this is just pure shadow work. And what we've done today is go into the nitty gritty feelings of what it's like to be in shadow work without actually saying shadow work. Surprise! We dropped shadow work on you. No, not on you.
Not on you. I think it's episode 6, I think, is shadow work.
Cool.
Yes, listen to that one too. Another one I wanted to plug, books are Leadership and Self-Deception can really help, and The Anatomy of Peace. Those are 2 great books that can really help with the conflict. And then the last one I'll plug is The Big Leap. The Big Leap by Gay Hendricks.
Yeah.
And that has a lot to do with the subconscious and how it affects your life and affects how much drama and how much goodness you let into your life, basically. We also love TBM here, To Be Magnetic, have always been big fans, and they really help you break down the inner child stuff. They can be really helpful as well.
I just thought of another book. So it's called The Power of TED, and TED is an acronym for the empowerment dynamic. If you've ever heard of the Cartman drama triangle, which is like victim, martyr, persecutor, this is an empowered version of it, and it's told as an allegory. So it's like a story that's really interesting and compelling and easy to read, but it teaches you about the empowerment dynamic. It's always really valuable for being able to look at people differently as well as yourself.
I love this. Yeah. And this day and age, I think the most dangerous thing we're doing right now is being in echo chambers. And they're created by algorithms and people who just want to keep you in one little spot, which creates these little micro cults. So the effort we have to take is to get out of those bubbles, even though we don't like it, even though we think that it's bad and wrong and evil. Because anytime you think de facto bad and wrong and evil, you are coming up against shadow and you're coming up against fear. That's just going to be true. So your challenge, regardless of who you are, is to look for something or someone outside of your little bubble who believes something different than you do, and just listen to them talk about their lives, whether that's through a book, whether that's in person, whether that's online. Find someone who is very different than you and understand them a little bit. Yeah. It can be as simple as, like, if you're a cat person, go find a dog person and ask them questions about why they're a dog person and be genuinely curious. Like, it can be that simple. It can be that low pressure. I think for most people, whether they're a cat or dog person or something else entirely, is fairly low pressure. That may not be true for everyone. But seriously, like, actually go do that, because it will show your brain that you are capable of listening to another human being who thinks very differently from you about something, that then you can transfer that to harder and harder subjects.
Yeah, low stakes is a great place to start. Like, I love Superman, I love Batman, that kind of thing. Things that
Star Trek versus Star Wars.
I mean, to some people, that's real high stakes.
I know.
Real high stakes.
Super
Our
high.
fandoms.
Lord of the Rings versus Harry Potter. But, whatever is low stakes for you. And I would say, like, I think debate is very valuable. Obviously, I'm a lawyer. I'm going to say that. But I think the debate is very valuable. However, for this exercise, just try to listen. Just try to listen. Just try to get to know this person who's different than you, this practice that's different than your practice, without trying to say, is it bad? Is it good? Without trying to turn off that evaluating thing, turn off like trying to argue with them that your way is better. Just try to get to know them, purely to know them. And a powerful tool for that is to hear somebody's story. When we hear stories, it turns off some of that debating and it turns on our compassion. And that's what we want to have. We want to be coming from a place of curiosity and compassion. So
then a little secret for when I want to debate somebody and I come up and I'm like, I gotta counter this. If you're in that listening state, that's just a signal to say, I'm going to ask another question. Okay, tell me more about this thing. Even if it's just as simple as that, tell me more. that is a great way to go deeper rather than trying to tell them they're wrong. Because once you tell them they're wrong, you're going to shut them off and they're not going to talk to you ever again. That's just how that goes.
It's true. It's very, very true. That is perfect. Questions get past that filter, that wall, and they help us. So stay compassionate, stay curious, our friends. We love you.
You love you. Thanks so much for listening, and we'll see you next week.